Welcome to our program, Astronomy for Everyone. Here in the studio with me is John Schroer, member of our own Ford Amateur Astronomy Club. And today, John, we're going to talk about the constellations of spring.
Very good. That's correct, Don. Springtime is an interesting time of year for constellations. I mean, for the last 3 months, we've had these spectacular winter stars, Orion the Hunter, Taurus the Bull. Spring is a little more of a subtle time of year to look at constellations because there's only 3 really bright stars this springtime, but there are lots of constellations to look at. We'll start off with the constellation that actually told the ancient folks before they had calendars that spring would soon be here. And that constellation is Leo the Lion. It is high in the eastern sky by evening time in April, and it features one bright star called Regulus, which is the heart of the lion. You can tell Leo by the backwards question mark shape which forms his head and his mane. The punctuation point of the question mark is Regulus, the heart star of the Leo the Lion.
Regulus is really a very pronounced star, sort of a blue-white.
Yeah, it's a blue-white star, and it's one of the 3 bright stars of springtime. So it's very easy to see.
Good. Anything else about Leo?
Well, Leo also starts an area of the sky known as the realm of galaxies. If you look at the triangle that marks the bat legs and the tail of Leo the Lion, there is beginning a lot of galaxies that you can see, including the Leo triplet, consisting of Messier number 65, Messier 66, and a new general catalog galaxy 3628, so a trio of galaxies.
Very interesting. Now with Leo heralding the start of spring, can we say that this is where we get the saying, spring comes in like a lion?
That's correct. The next constellation I'd like to talk about has the second bright star in our sky, and that's going to be Bootes, the herdsman. When I look at it in the nighttime sky, it reminds me of a giant ice cream cone that's lost one of its double scoops. At the very bottom is the bright red-orange star called Arcturus. And like I said, it's the second bright star in our springtime sky.
When I take a look at the herdsman, Bootes, I think of a kite, because I think of spring, and what do we see in spring but kites?
Yeah, go out and fly a kite.
There you go.
Yep. Bootes also has a few galaxies of its own, but it's not nearly as rich as the next constellation we'll talk about, which most people can hardly see because it doesn't have any bright stars at all. And it's rather strangely named, Coma Berenices. Now that in the Latin means Berenice's hair. Now Berenice was a queen of Egypt, and her husband had to go off on a dangerous mission, and so she went to the temple of Aphrodite and promised that if her husband returned safe, she would sacrifice her hair to the goddess. So when he came back from that particular war, she went to the temple and cut off all of her hair. Now, she was renowned around the ancient world for having very beautiful, very long hair. The next morning, disturbing news came because the hair had disappeared from the altar of the temple of Aphrodite. And the pharaoh was not exactly pleased, and he was going to be dispatching the priests when the court astrologer suggested they come back at night and he would show them where the hair had went. When he returned that night, he took them out into the night air and pointed to a fuzzy part of the night sky and said that's where the queen's hair is, because Aphrodite was so pleased by the sacrifice by the queen. Now, Coma Berenices, as I said before, has no bright stars, but it is filled with galaxies, and this is the main theme of the springtime sky. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of galaxies that you can see if you happen to own a telescope. You might be able to see a few of these galaxies with a good pair of binoculars, 10 by 50s or larger, but basically these are galaxies you would need a telescope to really see clearly. Here's an example of an edge-on spiral galaxy. Imagine this is what the Milky Way would look like if you were looking edge-on far away from our home galaxy. You can see the dark dust lane, and the outer rim is sort of like the suburbs of a city. It's where all the new construction's going on, where new stars are forming out of these giant clouds of gas and dust.
Any other interesting constellations that our viewers can look for in the springtime sky?
Absolutely. The third bright star in our springtime sky is featured in the constellation Virgo, the Lady. Now, Virgo features one very bright star called Spica. It marks the handle of a sickle, which the ancients used to use to harvest grain with, or it represents some wheat she is holding in her hand. Spica is a blue-white star, and you can see a decent amount of blue when you look at it in the night sky. Now, for April, it also has a planet visiting, and that's the one with all the rings around it, and that's Saturn. Saturn will be hanging out in Virgo and has been since it began to appear in our night sky back in March.
Now, I understand Jupiter's or Saturn's rings are now tipping more towards us so that we can see them much better than we could, say, even a year ago.
Yeah, a year ago, the rings were edge on to the Earth, made them very hard to see. But now, the tilt of Saturn is letting us see the rings as the rings are now tilted toward the south. So we're seeing a lot more of the northern hemisphere and the very top of the rings of Saturn.
Now, I understand, too, that there are a couple of other interesting constellations in the neighborhood of Virgo.
That's correct. And this would be the constellations of Corvus the Crow and Crater the Cup. Corvus the Crow is based on a story that Corvus and all crows in the ancient days were actually beautiful birds with a beautiful singing voice and white feathers. Corvus was a servant of Apollo, the sun god, and he was sent on a trip to fetch some water from Eridanus, the sky river. But along the way, Corvus came across a fig tree with lots of ripe figs, and that was his favorite fruit, so he sat down on one of the tree limbs and began to eat his fill. After a while, he remembered that he was on an errand for Apollo, and so he went to the river, got some water, and he flew back. When Apollo asked him, well, what took you so long? Corvus lied and said he was detained by snakes in the river, and Apollo knew better. There were no snakes in the sky river. So as punishment, he turned the crow's feathers from white to black, gave him an awful sounding voice. And from that day forward, all crows have had black coarse feathers and not too pleasant a singing voice.
Now, Crater represents the cup, correct?
That's correct. You might recall that the large holes we see on the moon and here on Earth, such as meteor crater, is actually named after the Latin word for cup. When Galileo first noticed these strange holes in the moon, he thought they looked like a cup from above, and that's why he called them crater. Now, between Crater and Corvus, there is one spectacular galaxy. It's known as Messier 104, and it's better known as the Sombrero Galaxy. It looks like a giant sombrero hat floating out there in space. Although, over the last 50 years, some people have taken to call it the Flying Saucer Galaxy, because it reminds people of the flying saucer in the movie Forbidden Planet, starring Leslie Nielsen.
Yes, indeed. I've seen some great images of M104, and it does, in fact, look much like a sombrero or even the flying saucer. Anything else interesting in the spring sky that our viewers would want to take a look at?
Well, near the end of April, there is a small meteor shower called the Lyrids, which recurs every year around the 21st to the 22nd. You can see 10 to 20 shooting stars an hour. And that's been observed for the last couple of hundred years. So that's been a pretty regular feature.
Well, John, it sounds like there are a lot of things to look at in the spring sky, even though we don't have that many bright stars to see. But I hope our viewers will get outside with just their eyes or even a pair of binoculars and take a look at some of these objects that we've been talking about. We're going to take a short break, show you what's coming up with astronomy events in our area, and right after that, we'll be back with some news about beginners' nights. Stay tuned. welcome back to our program. Springtime brings on the start of another season of Beginner's Night sponsored by the Ford Amateur Astronomy Club. With me is John Schroer again, and we're going to talk about these upcoming events. John, what's the information for our viewers?
Well, Beginner Nights are an event where the public can come and join the Ford Club out at Island Lake Recreation Area. And that's a state-run facility. It's located off of Kensington Road, just south of Interstate 96. It's just on the edge between Oakland and Livingston County. And it's an event run by the club to help people who are just getting started in astronomy, to help them shop for what kind of telescope they should buy for their first scope. If they have their telescope, if they're having technical issues on how to set it up, if it aligns to the North Star so it can track the sky, they'll teach them how to do that. If they're trying to discover how to begin to observe the different features on the moon, or to look at the planets that are visible in the nighttime sky, or even begin to maybe learn to take photographs or digital images through their telescope, the Ford Club is going to have people there that will assist them in that. If you are interested in seeing these objects through a telescope for the first time, we'll have certain stations throughout the area. We meet at Spring Pond, which is pretty deep inside the park, where you can take a look through a telescope and see the moon and Saturn and some of the other objects in the nighttime sky.
Now, our viewers may be wondering, is there a cost for this event?
Well, the Island Lake Recreation Area is a state-run facility. Since the event happens in the late afternoon, they usually start about 7 o'clock so we can set up equipment and get things ready before darkness falls. They usually don't collect the fee. So there's no cost in getting in. The Ford Club most certainly doesn't charge for this event.
But they should be prepared to perhaps pay if there is someone at the toll booth?
Yeah, there's I believe it's a $4 donation, and there's usually somebody there up until dinner time or just before 7 o'clock that will collect. If you arrive much later than that, then there usually isn't, they've gone home for the evening and there isn't a charge. There is a couple of conditions to maintain security for the event. If you arrive around 7 o'clock, you'll have no problem getting access to the park itself and to the Spring Pond area. If you arrive much later at night, you'll find the gate closed and you'll have to wait for a Ford Club member to open the gate and let you in. Usually by 10 o'clock, we usually have a member go out to the gate and let people out. But if you hang around later, 11 o'clock or midnight, then you'll have to wait for a member to escort you out to the gate and then let you and your vehicle out of the recreation area.
Typically we do that on the hour.
That's correct.
And this way they can stay and observe with us, and we can help them, as you say, with their equipment questions or issues.
That's right. If they're shopping for a scope, or if they have a technical issue, if they have a telescope that's just not doing what they think it should do, we can usually help them out. We've even had people who have brought, how can I put this, inexpensive troubled telescopes that have major flaws. And we can find ways to help them get the maximum performance they can out of that scope, and hopefully teach them what to look for when they go buy a better second telescope. Because almost every astronomer wanted to get a scope and they got what they could afford, and after they get beyond the beginner stage, they want something that definitely is easier to use and lets them see more of the sky.
Sort of like boats. Start out small and
work your way up. Yeah,
exactly. Now, we mentioned that we actually meet at Spring Pond, which is within the park. How can our viewers get a map so that they know how to get back to where we are?
Well, we have a flyer which is available through the Ford Amateur Astronomy Club website, and that website is www.boonhill.net/FAAC. If you check out the scroll in our show Astronomy for Everyone, that website is also listed.
Okay, and we have these scheduled every month beginning?
Yeah, the first one is scheduled to start on April the 9th, and then May 7th, June the 11th, July 9th, August the 6th, and then we start up in, we finish off in October on the 1st. September, we don't have a beginner's night, and these are all scheduled to occur when the first quarter moon or close to the first quarter moon, so we have a chance to look at the moon and look at the line between day and night called the terminator, and you can see some amazing stuff during that time of year. So we have a guaranteed target. Even if it's partly cloudy or hazy, we can always check out the moon and some of the planets. This event happens whether it's cloudy or clear. If it is snowing, for example, in April the 9th, which has happened in Michigan before, or if it is raining, the event will be canceled. And the flyer has a hotline that you can call to verify that the event has not been canceled due to inclement weather. I know we have met, even though there have been tornado watches in the area, but we only cancel for rain or freezing rain or snow.
Really, things that you wouldn't want to have your equipment out in.
Or yourself, for that matter.
Now, the May 7th program also ties in with Astronomy Day, correct?
That's correct. May 7th is International Astronomy Day, and there are events happening all over the area at the Detroit Science Center, where I work, the Cranbrook Institute of Science, Kensington Metro Park, which is across to the north of I-96 from Island Lake. They also have an event as well during the daytime.
It sounds like there'll be a full season of opportunities to view the evening sky with the Ford Club's Beginners Nights.
Absolutely. And it's not just the planets or the moon or deep sky objects. It's been a while, 14 years, but there's always the something that keeps astronomers very excited, the opportunity of seeing a brand new naked eye comet in the sky. And then people show up in droves because, you know, comets have a real hold on people.
Do we have one coming up that we know of?
Not yet, not that we know of, but people find new ones in the sky all the time.
Now, I understand too that April, which begins our Beginners Nights, also has another significance for astronomy.
That's correct. 2 years ago, the international astronomical community celebrated the International Year of Astronomy, which was passed by the General Assembly of the United Nations. They're trying to continue that by having 1 month dedicated to astronomy for the public, and that's Global Astronomy Month. It starts on the 2nd and the 3rd with a general star party, getting the public out and looking at the nighttime sky. We'll join in on that event the following week on April the 9th with our first Beginner's Night. And that'll be looking at Saturn, looking at the rings, trying to find some of its moons. The following week, we'll be looking at, my gosh, I've forgotten what it was. The week of the 21st and 22nd of April, that's going to be concentrating on the Lyrid meteor shower, where everybody can go out and play Chicken Little. You know, the sky is falling.
Yes.
Absolutely correct.
Yes.
And that'll wrap up the Global Astronomy Month.
Are there various places where people can go to take part in events, or should they check the Ford Club website, or are there other areas that they can go to get more information?
Well, if you visit the website for Astronomers Without Borders, which is sponsoring the Global Astronomy Month, they'll have locations listed in the United States, with our neighbors to the north, Canada. There'll be events over there as well, and around the planet. You can find that link by going to the Ford Club website.
Very good, very good. These events that'll be out there, they're open, as we said, to the general public. They don't have to have any prior knowledge, just an interest and a curiosity.
That's correct. This is to encourage people to enjoy the night sky, because you got to remember, of all the sciences, just going out at night and looking at the sky, that was the first science. And it's one of the few sciences that still exist where a person without a PhD in astronomy or astrophysics can actually contribute to the body of knowledge. Amateur astronomers observe the sun and sunspots. Amateur astronomers are the ones that make the most discoveries of comets in the nighttime sky. Some amateur astronomers have actually discovered new asteroids as they orbit the sun and they appear in our night sky.
I remember just a few weeks ago there was a program for people to count the stars in the night sky to gauge light pollution, and I know that that happens on a yearly basis.
That's correct. In March, they asked people to look at and count the number of stars they see in the night sky around the constellation of Orion the Hunter. For April, that focus changes, and they ask people, which you can do, to count the stars in Leo the Lion. And you can contribute that to a database, which is then published in a Google Maps database format, so you can see the general brightness or darkness of the night sky based on the location, while the reports come from all over the world.
Now, people can view the night sky in the city and in the country. They don't have to worry about getting out to a dark sky site to be able to take part in these Global Astronomy Month activities?
That's correct. They want people to observe where they live. You don't have to travel to outside Alpena or the Upper Peninsula. They want you to observe where you live, whether it's in Wyandotte or if it's in East Point or in Berkeley. They want you to observe the sky from your yard, because we can then measure the general darkness of the sky in our cities as well as out in the country.
Now, other astronomy clubs in our area besides the Ford Club, such as the Warren Club or Oakland or Seven Ponds, would be involved with this Global Astronomy Month?
Yeah, they're all participating, and you can check that out by going to boonhill.net, and that is Michigan's Astronomy Club website. It has links to all the astronomy clubs, not just in the southeastern Michigan area, but throughout Michigan as well, covering the entire state, both lower and upper peninsulas.
John, this has really been a very interesting conversation. Hopefully our viewers will be able to take part in these activities. And right after this, we'll head up to What's Up?
The term of the month for April 2011, well, it's a phrase, extraterrestrial intelligence. This idea is thousands of years old. People have wondered, well, we have people here on Earth. Are there other places like Earth where beings of intelligence could live? And as time went on, we understood that the sun is just one of the stars. The stars in the sky and the sun, they're basically the same sort of idea. And so the idea was that, well, maybe some of these stars have planets around them, and if they have planets, perhaps some of those planets could have life. Some of that life could be intelligent life. And we think that we're intelligent. So we would like to see if we are alone in the universe. So the steps were these. First, you have the idea, are we alone? Second, you understand that the stars are suns. Third, you try to discover whether any of these stars have planets. But we took a sidestep. About 50 years ago, Frank Drake decided that he had a radio telescope that was sensitive enough that if someone was broadcasting from a nearby star, he might be able to receive it. So he checked a few nearby stars, and he didn't find anything, but the search has gone on. It's not a very big endeavor. In any case, in 1995, the first planets orbiting other stars were discovered. And using those techniques, up until recently, we've discovered a little over 500 planets. But about a year ago, the Kepler spacecraft was launched into orbit, and its mission is to stare in one particular spot in the sky for at least 3.5 years. And the idea is that 150,000 stars are being monitored for their brightness. And what we're hoping for is some of these stars will dim a little bit as a planet goes in front of the star. From the dimming of the planet, we can tell how big the planet is, and by how often it goes by, we can tell what their orbit is, how far out from their sun. So what we're looking for is we're looking for Earth-like planets around sun-like stars. So to be Earth-like, you have to be big enough to be rocky and hold an atmosphere, but small enough so that you're not a gas giant. And you also would like to have liquid water available on the surface like we have here on Earth. So you have to be a certain distance and so on. So the Kepler mission hopes to tell us how many Earth-like planets there should be around Sun-like stars. And that's the term of the month for April 2011.
Welcome to the What's Up section for Astronomy for Everyone. I'm John Schroer. April is the first full month of springtime, and it brings us a whole new selection of constellations. They're not nearly as bright as the ones of wintertime, but they have their own particular qualities which make them very nice to look at. As usual, we'll start with the moon for April, and we're looking at now the 4 phases of Steve Whitty, which is representing the moon with or without his beard. New moon will be on April the 3rd, 2 days after April Fool's Day, with the first quarter moon happening on April 11th, where you can see about half the moon illuminated by the light of the sun. The full moon will be on April 18th, which this year is actually when your federal tax returns are due. And then the third quarter moon will be on the 25th of April. Now for planets in our nighttime sky, we'll start with the early morning sky just before sunrise. Above the eastern horizon, you can see the bright planet Venus, the brightest planet in our nighttime sky, and the 4th brightest light in our sky anytime. After the Sun, Moon, the International Space Station, we have Venus. Very close to the horizon, you could have the M planets, Mercury and Mars. Mars will be slightly brighter because it is a lot closer and bigger than Mercury, which is only about 3,000 miles wide. And that'll be visible through the first half of April. If we move to the evening sky, if you look to the south, you will see the moon next to the bright planet Saturn, the one with all the rings. This image shows you the location of the moon near Saturn on the 15th of April. Now, a week later, starting on April 21st through the 22nd, will be the peak of the Lyrid meteor shower. Now, meteor showers are basically concentrations of small particles the size of a grain of sand to a grain of salt, which are basically hanging out together as a cloud in the night sky. The Earth passes through this on a yearly basis, and as these small stones and bits of dust heat up and then melt in the Earth's atmosphere, they appear to look like shooting stars. The technical term is, of course, meteors. They're named the Lyrids because the radiant, or the point where all the meteors will appear to be coming out of, is located just above the constellation of Lyra the Harp, featuring the brightest star of the summertime sky called Vega. It's about 27 light years away. Now, this meteor shower will not give you lots of meteors. It'll go from anywhere from 10 to 20 meteors an hour. The further away you are from city lights, the more meteors you'll be able to see in the sky. And that's it for What's Up in the Night Sky for April 2011. Thanks for watching.